Welcome to the SpaHive Podcast. We're your hosts, Julie Pankey
and MaryAnn, spa leaders, business strategists, and business besties who are pulling back the curtain on what it actually takes to grow a business and a life you don't secretly want to escape from.
This is where leadership meets honesty, where revenue meets relationships, and where we talk about the things no one puts on Instagram.
So, if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, or a high achiever who's building something meaningful, but also navigating team dynamics, burnout, boundaries, and big goals, you're in the right place.
No highlight reels, no sugarcoating, just real conversations, practical strategy, and a little laughter along the way. Let's get into it.
We couldn't get in the same room this week, so instead we gave each other the microphone, the same questions, and I have absolutely no idea what Julie's going to say, which honestly feels like a pretty appropriate way to close out our slightly off-script August topics. Today's topic? The things we refuse to feel guilty about anymore. Some are a little silly, some are work-related, and some might go a little bit deeper. Julie recorded her answers, I recorded mine. Neither of us know what each other said. So here. All right, let's start small because there are so many things we somehow manage to make ourselves feel guilty about that really aren't that serious. The DoorDash order, not answering a text, going to bed ridiculously early. I love going to bed early. Buying the thing purely because it makes our life easier. So our first question was, what's something small, maybe even completely ridiculous, that you refuse to feel guilty about anymore? Well, let me start off. So this won't come to a surprise to any of our loyal listeners, but I will no longer feel ridiculous guilt about enjoying fall early. I know, MaryAnn, it's still August. Julie loves her boating. I get it. But here's the thing. I like fall. I like the anticipation of fall. I like when the mornings start to feel a little bit different. I like thinking about pumpkins and mums, and I love wearing a sweatshirt, even though, yes, I live in Maryland, and by noon, I'm going to regret it and be sweating. But every year, I feel like there's this weird pressure, like you're on two sides of the gate. Do you celebrate fall early or do you wait until the actual start of fall? Well, I'm starting now. You'll be happy to know that I think today I'm going to get my first pumpkin ice latte from Starbucks. Of course, it's got to be iced because it's going to be 84 degrees today. Now, I'm not wishing summer away. I had a great summer. It was a full summer. I actually love summer, unless I'm pregnant, because it's very, very hot when you're pregnant. And I still get excited when the first little signs of fall is coming. So yes, I'm going to decorate early. Yes, I have a apple spice candle lit right next to me. But you know what? I'm giving up the guilt and I am going to enjoy fall. Now, let's hear what Julie is giving up.
Okay, my little shameless guilt. I refuse to feel guilty about spending money to eliminate minor inconveniences from my life. And I mean minor. I feel like I've reached a point where if $12.95 can make an irritating task disappear, I'm probably paying $12.95. And I'm talking about food delivery. Now, I live in a place where, let's be honest, it's hard to get takeout delivery. Not many DoorDash choices. However, I can get food grocery delivery, which I take advantage of every single week. Valet parking, if it's not free, paying someone to help me with a project, upgrading something, buying the thing that saves time. There was definitely a time where I would think, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. Like, that's ridiculous, Julie. You can do this yourself. And yes, you know what? Yes, I can. That's actually not the question anymore. The question is, but do I want to? I mean, I'm not talking about a full-time staff to follow me around and do all the things that I don't want to do. I mean, let's not rule anything out, but I'm not really talking about that. But somewhere along the line, I feel like we decided that inconvenience is virtuous. Like if I drive 25 minutes to save $8, I've demonstrated super character. Meanwhile, I've spent an hour, used gas, I'm annoyed, and probably bought something else while I was there. I probably bought multiple something else's while I was there. So I think I finally started putting a value on my time. And honestly, my aggravation, because aggravation settles in a little bit more easy these days. If something gives me back an hour in my day, makes my day easier, or means that I get to spend that time doing something that I really love doing, that's worth something. So I don't get bonus points at the end of my life for doing everything the hard way. And guess what? Neither will you. If there's a convenience fee and the convenience is good enough, apparently I'm paying for it.
Hey, okay. One guilt officially released. I hope you did it with us. Push pause if you didn't. Think about your ridiculous guilt that really you're gonna just release it. But now we're gonna get into something maybe a little bit harder. Because somehow work comes with its own giant collection of things we're supposed to feel bad. And I want to expand this topic a little bit. I want it to expand outward, not just work. Work to me is defined if you are getting paid for it or you're not. If you're a stay-at-home parent, I consider that work. If you go out of your house to work, that's work. If you work from home, that's work. If you volunteer, that's work. So let's keep all of those things in mind when we're looking at work guilt. Now, maybe it's saying no. Maybe it's not charging what you're worth. Maybe it's not answering an email at 9 p.m., wanting to make more money, wanting to grow bigger, changing your mind. Maybe it's delegating something you technically could do yourself. So question number 2, what's something professionally that you've stopped apologizing or feeling guilty for?
The work one. Professionally, I am trying. And I am a work in progress. No matter how long I've been doing what I do, I myself have not achieved perfection. But professionally, I've been trying to stop feeling guilty about having high expectations. For a long time, I think I worried that having high expectations made me difficult. Like, am I asking too much? Am I expecting too much for someone to show up for their shifts 90% or higher of the time? Should I just let things go? And I have this terrible habit, or at least I used to, where if something wasn't getting done, I would just do it. I was the person that would always do it. I would figure it out. I know I could do it faster. I know how to do it. I can fix it. I'll stay late. I'll answer emails in the middle of the night. I'll figure it out, right? And I mean, that's 30 plus years of my career. And for a while, that feels like leadership because you're getting things done. Everybody thinks you're incredibly capable, but eventually you realize you've trained everyone around you that Julie will catch it. And that's where you realize having high expectations isn't the same as expecting perfection. I absolutely don't expect perfection. I make mistakes all the time. All the time. I have multiple notebooks because I take copious notes so that I don't forget things that I promise. I change my mind. I get things wrong. But what I do expect is people to care. I expect follow through. I expect ownership. I expect you to do what you said you were going to do. And if you can't or don't understand, I expect communication. I expect communication with me. I expect communications. I can't even say expect. I expect communications with our teams. I expect communications with our other managers or leaders. And you know what? I don't think I need to apologize for that anymore. Actually, I think lowering the expectation because you're afraid of making someone uncomfortable, or lowering the expectation because you're afraid that they can't meet the expectation, isn't being kind to the person. People deserve to know what excellence looks like. And my job as a leader is to give them the tools, clarity, and support to get them there. And sometimes my job is to let them figure it out without swooping in and saving them. So I've begun to stop apologizing and feeling guilty within myself for having a high bar and setting a high bar and expecting the highest standards to be met. I'm just trying to get better at helping people reach it instead of grabbing the bar and carrying it myself.
All right. Let's see. What's something I'm giving up feeling guilty about when it comes to, quote, work, unquote? Mine is asking questions. And this is something I've definitely had to get better about. I think that there's a lot of pressure to walk into a room and already know the answer, already know how something works, already know what somebody means. And sometimes it feels easier to just nod along and figure it out later and be the person who says, wait, what does that mean? But I realized that asking questions doesn't make me less capable. It actually makes me better at my job. Actually, some of the best things I've learned while working have come from being willing to say, I don't know, can you explain it to me? And sometimes I'm asking because I generally don't know, and sometimes I'm asking because I want to understand why we are doing something the way that we're doing it. I've also realized I'd much rather ask the questions now than spend 3 hours later trying to figure out something that could have been explained to me in 3 minutes. Now, don't get me wrong, I will take the time to definitely learn something new. I love learning new programs. I love learning new projects. But I also need to understand that not everything has to be a wild goose chase. So I'm done feeling like I need to know everything before I walk into the room. I'm going to ask questions, and I actually refuse to feel guilty about that anymore. All right, guys. And then there's the guilt that isn't funny. The stuff we've carried around for years because somewhere along the way we decided we should have done something differently. So the last question is the one we both had to sit with a little bit longer. The one thing that actually matters. What's something you've spent years feeling guilty about that you see completely different now? Maybe it's a decision you made, a relationship you're in or were in, motherhood, your career, walking away or walking towards something, resting when everyone else seems to be hustling, or simply realizing you're not the same person you used to be. I could honestly probably agree with every single one of those statements. I've had a relationship that I now look back on that I think differently about. Motherhood is a constant changing viewpoint for me. My career, as everyone knows, constantly learning new things. Have I had to walk away from things? Yes. Have I walked toward things that I wasn't expecting I ever walked towards? Yes. Have I wanted something different? 100%. Now, I can say I do still struggle with resting when everyone else seems to be hustling, mainly because I'm pretty busy, but I'll get there. But the one thing that I am going to really earnestly try to give up guilt is being late. I know for some people that's frivolous, and I know some people have already tamed that beast in their life, but being late for me really can set my whole tone and my mood. I can go from very excited to being 10 minutes late to something and now thinking it's ruined. And, as I've gotten older, of course, yes, as I've had kids, it's never that black and white anymore. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to be late for like a wedding or a funeral or, the release of like pumpkin spice lattes or something like super important. But I also need to realize like, you know what? If we got to our Saturday activity a half an hour later, it's okay. You know what? If I am 5 minutes late to a phone call, that's okay. Life happens. And I feel like the more that we give ourselves that grace, we'll extend it towards other people. Now, there are people who are habitually late, that's their trend and that's just what they do. So I'm not really talking about them because they really just need to work on time management. But I'm talking about the people that are, for lack of better terms, killing themselves to get to a play date on time, to get to, dinner with the friend right on the clock. When you're meeting people, a lot of times life happens. Things happen. Things are going to be late. And so I really am trying to, and I'm going to feel less guilty when perhaps I don't make it there at 9:01 or 9 o'clock on the dot, but maybe it's 9:10. I think that would go a long way. It takes off the pressure, and it also kind of starts getting rid of that perfectionist type of mindset.
And now to get a little bit more personal on our podcast, a little bit more vulnerable. The thing that I think I spent years feeling the most guilty about was choosing myself. I don't even know that I realized that's what I was doing at the time. I think I just had this belief that being a good person meant being there, saying yes, helping, fixing, taking care of, making sure everybody was okay. And when you're someone who's capable, people come to rely on you. And honestly, there's something that feels good about being needed. But there's another side to that. You start feeling responsible for things that aren't actually yours to carry. Someone's disappointed, you feel guilty. Someone needs something, you rearrange your life. Someone isn't okay, you immediately start thinking, okay, what can I do? And then the rare time you say, I can't, I don't want to, or I need this instead, you feel selfish. Then I started to realize that I see that kind of differently now. I don't think choosing myself means I love anybody else less. And I don't think loving somebody means I'm responsible for making their life work. I can show up. I can love somebody fiercely. I can help. I can be generous. But I don't have to exhaust myself to prove any of those things. I think that's been one of the hardest things for me to learn, because being needed and being loved can get tangled up together if you're not careful. And maybe there were times in my life when I thought my value came from how much I could do for somebody else. I don't believe that anymore. If I could go back in time, isn't there a song? Find a way. Okay. I tell myself you don't have to exhaust yourself proving that you're enough. And choosing yourself sometimes doesn't make you selfish. It means you're finally including yourself among the people you're taking care of. So when enthusiastic Julie says yes to an invitation and exhausted Julie doesn't feel like doing it on the day of, I just tell people that I can't. I don't make up excuses anymore. I don't pretend to be sick or making up an excuse about something else coming up that I'm not able to do it. I just try to be really honest. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, and I just don't think I can do it. I need to choose me for the 2 hours that I would choose someone else. And I think that comes with age. Wisdom comes with age. Not making excuses anymore comes with age. So my one takeaway would be, don't be like most of us and have the wisdom come with age. Put yourself first now. That doesn't mean ignoring your kids. It doesn't mean ignoring your spouse. It doesn't mean not going to work because you don't feel like it. But it means knowing and understanding that sometimes you need to choose yourself first. The same work and dedication that you put into your marriage and your children, put into getting in your walk or your water or eating a little healthier, whatever the things are that are important to you, reading your book. I refuse to have that guilt for choosing myself. Nope. Not anymore.
It's funny how much energy we spend feeling guilty about things that eventually we realize were never really ours to carry. And maybe that's the takeaway for this whole off-script August we've had. We're allowed to change our mind. We're allowed to make things easier. We're allowed to want different things than we used to. And we're definitely allowed to stop apologizing for every decision that doesn't make sense to everyone else. Maybe the question is, what are you officially done feeling guilty about? Friends, we invite you to think about that this week. Don't worry, we'll be back next week. We'll probably be in the same room, well, virtually, and we can't wait to see you back here live in the SpaHive.
Thank you so much for joining us today in the SpaHive.
If this episode sparked an idea, made you think differently, or just made you feel a little less alone in business or life, share it with someone who might need it too.
Don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss a conversation.
And check out the show notes for links, resources, and ways to stay connected with us, including the Spa 101 course taught by our very own Julie Pankey.
We're so grateful you're part of this community.
And we'll see you next time.